Hey guys, this is Tiffany, and you found us on the Wise Skies channel. And today on the podcast, I'm interviewing Celeste Brooks. Hi, Celeste.
Hi, Tiffany. So good to see you today.
You too. I'm so excited to be talking about eclipses with you. Guys, I just got chill bumps, you know. If you haven't found Celeste yet, it's Astrology by Celeste. And she's got a great Instagram channel. She's doing all kinds of things with her business that is so much fun to watch. And we are collaborating on a few projects in the background. So I invited her to teach us a class on eclipses, and we got into this really fun casual conversation, and I just wanted to introduce you to her. So Celeste, I wanted you to kind of start by talking a little bit about your transition from the corporate world to the astrology world and how you were working with the moons for that.
Yes. I spent over 25 years in corporate America in sales, marketing, and business development roles. So my background is I have a bachelor's in biology. So I have a very scientific mind, and I have an MBA as well. And astrology found me and just took over my life. And once I realized I'm an Taurus sun, which I really related to. Finding out my Aries moon, that just blew my mind. It explains so much about myself and my reactions to things, because I'm this like totally stable, practical person, and occasionally I could get really fired up about things. And then the biggest thing is finding out I was Cancer rising and how important the moon is, and uncovering my connection to my moon, because I have my moon in the 10th house in Aries squaring my ascendant. So it has been a journey for me to really connect into my emotional body and my subconscious and things like that. And I use the moon cycles in order to start my astrology business and retire from corporate America early. I retired in May, and yeah, I love talking to people about everything astrology, but especially how important the moon is, because we live in such a solar world where everything is just like go, go, go. Learning about how we should, step back and do the reflection and do the releasing every month has changed my life, has changed my health, has changed my perspective.
Yes, and I mean, and how incredible to get that insight, that aha moment, and let the moon really lead you through your practice, through starting your own astrology company, through being able to kind of mother and nurture people that are looking for insight the way that you found it. You're based in California, right?
Yes, I live in Oakland, right outside San Francisco.
Okay, so we're recording this in late November. I'm in shorts and a tank top. What's the weather like over there?
It's actually pretty nice. It's about 60-ish.
Yeah, okay. So we're sorry,
So not too
everybody.
warm, but nice.
We're enjoying some perfect weather here in Texas today too. So, all right. So we are have been wanted to talk to you because I think that I owe our audience at Wise Skies an apology, and I'm here to just say if I have scared you about the eclipses, I'm sorry. And Celeste is going to help bring some more information to it. The thing with eclipses is that, in my experience, it can feel like you're living 100 days in 24 hours. It can feel like a lot of compressed energy. The ancients, right, used to use eclipses to initiate wars, right? And so I feel like there's been this wave in modern astrology or sub astrology where people are like, oh, eclipses, it's that magical time. And I wanted to dispel that, like, yes and no, right? Like there's a lot changing, and it can feel very, very disruptive depending on where the eclipse hits your personal chart, right? And so it took Celeste looking at my chart for me to see some things that I didn't see looking on my own. So yes, you can look at your chart. We know the degrees of the eclipses this season. You can make some decisions for yourself, but there's something that's really beneficial when you have a Cancer rising, Aries moon, Taurus sun woman looking at your eclipse, how it's going to impact you. And so in today's episode, Celeste is going to do a hot take on my chart because I'm willing a participant here. And but before that, I wanted Celeste for you to just kind of give us your take on what it feels like during eclipse season, and how beautifully you've woven in the introduction to the nodes in your article. And I'll link her article to the podcast in the show notes. So help us out.
Yeah, so every month, I'm sure your audience knows, we have a new moon. And then as the light grows, we set intentions and we put things into motion in our lives. And at the full moon, it's like this culmination point. And then as the light wanes, we're disseminating what we have to say and what we've learned to the world. And at some point, we start going inward and releasing and get ready to start anew. Well, eclipses happen around twice a year. There's 2 eclipse seasons a year where we'll have solar and lunar eclipses, and there are new moons and full moons like times 10 or times 10,000. And the reason they're so big is because they're near the nodes of the moon, and the north node and the south node are the nodes of the moon, and they speak to where we're going for ourselves. The north node is our Dharma point, what we're stretching for, what feels uncomfortable to bring into our life to evolve our soul and our purpose. And the south node is what is comfortable and can be a bit routine, can be learned through the family, can be, it's also like a talent, but a lot of times we revert into that south node behavior when we're stressed or what have you. And so we're trying to balance the two, but we're trying to move from the south to the due north of the north node. So this brings a faded quality to the eclipses because they're destiny points, they're fate points, and eclipses happen when the nodes are very close to the sun and moon. So that in a nutshell is why eclipses are so big. They're big energy, they're portals when essentially in a solar eclipse, it's easy to think about where, imagine standing outside, you're an ancient standing outside in the middle of the day, and all of a sudden the sky goes dark. And what happens is the moon moves between the sun and the earth, essentially cutting off the sun's transmission of light, of energy, of information to us. And then when light comes back, a channel has changed. Imagine walking through a door and then you turn around and look behind you, the door's closed. It's done. That part of your life is done. So that is why eclipses are also so big, because there's no turning back and we have to move forward. And yes, they're mostly for our highest good, although sometimes they coincide with really difficult life things.
It might not feel like that, right? Like it might
not feel great at the time, like relationships end
Mhm.
near eclipses.
Mhm.
And it may feel terrible, but just know if it's happening near an eclipse, it's most likely just meant to be. It's the time is done for you in that relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. And I have a lot of people in my practice going through those big, intense changes. Now, I want to know what your North Node is.
So my North Node is in Pisces and my South Node is in Virgo.
Okay.
And so I had spent most of my life in that South Node in Virgo, pursuing earthly things, being so like perfectionistic and a little too critical of myself and pushing myself so hard. And I thought it was for the best. I thought it was a skill, a talent. And I mean, it led to a lot of success, but it also led to like my Taurus self having, neck issues starting in my mid 40s, and just too much stress in my life, and moving into that North Node in Pisces and trusting and believing and releasing and just connecting more with my guides and my higher power has brought so much joy into my life. And even when I was in corporate America, even more, like I had my best year ever when I was leading into that North Node of Pisces. I was in sales and marketing, so that was the biggest life-changing thing, finding out about my nodes.
Right. Yes. I had an astrologer friend call mine out too. So a lot of you guys that know me, I have 4 planets in Scorpio over there in the 12th house, and 4 in Libra in the 11th, and 2 in Sag in the 1st house, and that's it, right? Like, it's a very condensed chart, and that's all I ever looked at was all that Scorpio 12th house stuff, and how behind the scenes my life was, and how much I enjoyed that aspect of my life. And but my North Node is in Leo, right? And so I had somebody early on in my studies say, you really need to be in front of the camera, not behind it. And I'm like, there is no way that is ever going to happen. You know, I am not going to step forward into that role. And she said, just try, just put your face on your logo. And so the first logo I had with the first cookbook I wrote, it's like a cartoon version of me. And it did really well. It was one of my more successful projects. And so, like you're talking about stepping into that Piscean North Node future and stepping into that Leo North Node role, it is a twist of fate. And it only comes with awareness, right? There's no way I would ever stepped into that without somebody sharing some light on it for me and with that awareness. And so, guys, if you don't know your North Nodes yet, definitely find that in your chart. It looks like the upside down horseshoe or the N, and the South Node looks like the U, of course. Jan Spiller wrote a great book on the North Nodes. What is it called?
Astrology for the Soul.
Astrology for the Soul. It's purple.
Amazing.
It's in the purple side of my bookshelf. But yeah, so that, to me, that's like the classic on North Node or nodes. Do you have any other resources that you like?
That is my favorite. Judith Hill wrote a book about the nodes, as well as Stephen Forrest, if you're interested in evolutionary astrology, where he really focuses in on the South Node, and that's more about talking like past lives. It's called Yesterday's Sky. That's also very interesting as well.
I'm so glad you brought him up, because everything you're saying, I mean, we've shared a very similar philosophy, and I am a Stephen Forrest junkie. So yes, I'm so glad you brought him up. Very solid, long-term, lifelong astrologer, also into sailing, interesting perspective. And part of that evolutionary astrology, guys, has to do with that we're changing, that we're evolving, that the observer affects the experiment, right? And so the planets and the archetypes are growing and changing too throughout this dance that we're doing in time. So, okay, back to eclipses. That was just a little segue. That's why they feel like this twisted fate, like karmic doors opening and closing, bookends of time. And so here in November, we've got one coming up, but the one that we want to talk about for this episode is the December 4th one. Is that okay? Or do you want to do a little splash of both? What do you think?
We can talk just about December if you like.
Okay.
I mean, mix in some things because they are connected.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So let's talk about them. What is your take on this particular eclipse cycle here in November and December? What can you share? What is it that you feel is the most pertinent thing to know about each of them?
Yeah, so one thing to think about the eclipses and the relationship with the nodes is that the nodes are in a sign for 18 months. So back in May of 2020, the North Node went into Gemini and the South Node went into the Sagittarius. And that's all about leaving behind preconceived notions, dogma we've learned, entrenched beliefs that are just based on faith or instincts, and finding new information and gathering that, having a beginner's mind, and then making changes in this new world that we're in right now based on that. So this has been the evolutionary pull for the last year and a half. And now coming up into this time, the North Node, they move backwards, and the nodes are now at 1 degree of north in Gemini, south in Sagittarius. So they're just about to change signs in January, I believe January 18th. They'll be going into Scorpio, South Node, and Taurus, North Node, because they move in retrograde formation. We are both excited about that. Yeah, so that has been all about information, but we're getting a sneak peek into what's coming this week with the eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus. it's a lunar eclipse. So the sun's at 27 Scorpio and the moon's at 27 Taurus. So we'll get a little bit of a sneak peek. It's going to be a little bit of an intense eclipse due to the fixed stars. It's right near
Oh, we
Algol.
got to talk about that. Yeah, tell them about Algol.
Yeah, so Algol is a fixed star, and in Greek mythology, it's Medusa's head. So Medusa being the Gorgon, whose story is just it's heartbreaking. She was a priestess who was, I guess you call it, a devotee of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and she broke her celibacy by having an affair with Poseidon. And someone was saying the other day that it was non-consensual, which I didn't know. I mean, there's a lot of mythology, but anyway, she was punished for expressing her sexuality, and turned into this monster with snakes. And if anybody looked at her,
when you suppress your sexuality, guys, see what happens.
Yeah, she was this beautiful woman and then got turned into this monster who, if anybody gazed upon her, they would be turned to stone. And so really this whole thing speaks to, and she was beheaded by, I don't need to get into all of it, but she was beheaded by Perseus. And that's the constellation. You see like Perseus, his sword, and holding Medusa's head. And he used her as a weapon after he beheaded her, and would against his opponents, and would turn them into stone. So there's mythology about how frightful it is and about how powerful it is. But I see it, and Bernadette Brady is an amazing astrologer who talks about the fixed stars, and she talks about how it's intense feminine passion. It's about the things men fear about women. And yeah, so it's also, there's mythology and Talmudic law about it being Lilith, Adam's wife, who refused to be subservient and fled and went to paradise. So there's all sorts of mythology about it all over the world. It's amazing with fixed stars how different cultures give them the same similar mythology. And yeah, so really important this week and around eclipse season. Look in the news and what you're seeing. Taylor Swift, can I diverge into some?
Go for it.
Taylor Swift has just launched a new album. Well, she relaunched her Red album, and there's a new song where she just goes in on what is thought to be Jake Gyllenhaal. And Taylor Swift is a Scorpio rising, and her rising is 26 Scorpio, which puts Algol 26 Taurus on her descendant. So the descendant is the point of the partner. And I encourage you to go listen to this song or watch the video on YouTube. I think it's called You Still Think of Me. I Bet You Think of Me, or something like that. And she figuratively beheads Jake Gyllenhaal and like kind of exposes some of the things about him, the relationship, how he made her feel small, and all of these things. So I think that's an example of the astrology in the news coming to life. And then recently there's been a lot of talk about the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, and that maybe she may be on the chopping block to be moved somewhere in the administration somewhere else. So that as well is what we're seeing in the news. But in ancient times, it's also often associated with, really battles were fought when Algol was present in order to try to gain an advantage over your opponents.
And it makes me think of, isn't Athena also the warrior goddess that has all the heads around her sleigh, right? So I had a bright idea to use the name Athena once, and fortunately I didn't, because that would have been a very intense karmic journey. But not for me, for somebody else. But this whole idea of beheading, and I think at a deeper psychological level too, it doesn't have to be all blood, guts, and gore in this physical existence. What would it be like if it was like almost like a spiritual beheading, in a way where your thoughts are transformed? You're talking about that pull between Sagittarius and Gemini with the nodes. We are being, in terms of leaving behind some of the old religion, the old philosophies, and having that beginner's mind, maybe it's not so bad to release some pressure from this side, right? Like releasing pressure could be another way of looking at that instead of all the beheading. I'm always looking for the bright side. So
oh yeah. So a positive way to use this, Taurus is the sign of self-worth, resources, values. How can you leave behind any feelings of low self-worth or low self-esteem and embrace your power, Scorpio, your power as a woman, your femininity as a woman, in order to move forward, standing in your power. I've recommended, and if you follow me on Instagram, I do like posts with prompts. One of the prompts is to write a love letter to yourself for this eclipse, and that would be a way of kind of like cord cutting or releasing any lack of worth within yourself, and to listen to the Fifth Harmony song "Worth It" is a great song to really embody, sing to yourself about how you're worth building wealth with Scorpio, or whatever you want to do with your life going forward.
And that's not a quick fix. You know what I mean? That rediscovering worth. It's something that we do decision by decision, day by day. Other, I think, ways to embody what you're saying, like you can put your hand on the mirror and be talking to your inner child, giving yourself a high five, embracing really what what your strengths are, what you're good at. And if you don't know, right, like if you've never looked at your astrology birth chart, if you've never looked at your human design, you know, if you've never looked at your numerology, these are great tools that help you see your natural strengths. And like I was talking about my North Node, you might not identify with them immediately, but you can use this as a time to experiment with your natural strengths that are written in the stars for you. So with that, we're talking about this lunar eclipse coming up here on the 19th of November. So anybody that has 27 degrees in fixed signs is probably going to get a little smack upside the head, more so than everybody else. You're going to want to look for what house that 27 degrees is. Now the fixed signs, right? So what are they? Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo, right? I have some colleagues and clients that have this in like this directly on their sun, you know, one that's directly on their moon. And so this is going in their first, seventh, fourth, and 10th house. And so these people are going through radical, uncomfortable changes in the self, in the partnership, at work, at home. Big things are changing. They're not bad, but I had a great mentor once tell me, you know, if you're uncomfortable, you're probably growing, right? And so it's never easy to hear that. But man, guys, isn't it nice to have the awareness and the leadership that Celeste is providing for us to see the roadmap ahead, to see what's coming, so we're not so scared about that light going out. You know what I mean? That metaphoric light going out. So, okay, lead us into the December one.
Yeah, and one last point
Oh, yeah.
about this eclipse is a big feature of is Mars is opposite Uranus. So
Yes.
it's all about kind of, there is expect the unexpected. Things I'm cautioning people, especially Americans, is this can be like an energy where there can be a bit of conflict. You can use it to get just like insights and downloads of amazing things to make these changes this portal offers us. But also for Thanksgiving next week, this energy will still be active. Really remember all the things you love about your family and your friends, and yeah, avoid conflict is the ultimate message of this eclipse. Be present, be ready to know your worth. And then we move into December. We have that last eclipse on December 4th at 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And yeah, so this is, excuse me, solar eclipses offer like new starts. And when there's a solar eclipse near the south node, which what we're having, there's often like it's related to other people. Like the south node is similar to the descendant. So really watch what new things are offered to you through other people, or ideas that come in through other people about how you can expand your point of view. Sagittarius. I love Sagittarius. It is ruled by Jupiter, which is now in Aquarius. So thinking about the collective. Yeah, so thinking about, you have one last opportunity for 19 years before the North Node, excuse me, the South Node comes back to Sagittarius, in order to like release any old dogma so that you can expand yourself and move forward into this new world. And yeah, I love how at the first eclipse, the moon will be right, what's called parallel, which is like a conjunction to Arcturus, which is the pathfinder fixed stars. It's about the hunter, the farmer who begins to hunt. So it's about like making big changes in order to move forward the way you want to. Like a lot of people are starting their own businesses, or changing things, or working differently. And I think these two eclipses are really going to help people launch, and they may be uncomfortable changes, but I think they'll be for our better good.
I hope so. I totally, I'm just like listening to every word. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And then I'm thinking about, in the predictions that I gave through Wise Skies this year, it was pay attention to what you're wanting to learn, because in this chaotic year, that year is going to end, and you're going to look back and be like, what happened? Where did that year go? And you could probably say that for about every year, but that was just really in alignment with what I was seeing in the astrology. And so another, I guess, journal prompt can be like, what have I learned? And that could be a deep dive, but it could be pretty shallow. My stuff that I learned this year, I was really committed to learning beekeeping and about mycology in terms of bioremediation and using mushrooms in the garden to help with water retention and other fun things that mycelium do, right? And so I'm seeing the end of the year coming. I'm seeing all this Sagittarius energy. I have a Sagittarius rising, and that's one way that this can apply to you personally. I'm just showing you how it applies to me personally. What have I learned? And then it doesn't stop there. I can't just learn a little bit about beekeeping. I've got 2 apiaries going. I'm taking a master beekeeping course, right? Sagittarius wants to go all the way, wants to go all in. My mushroom bricks are sprouting for the first time. I've never been successful with them before, right? So a little bit of knowledge goes a long way, right? Not every action needs a reaction, right? Not every beekeeping class has to turn into a master beekeeping program, but the idea is there that we're willing to evolve, we're willing to learn, and we're willing to see things from somebody else's point of view, because we're going to just give ourselves an A on our own paper every single time, right? So Sagittarius, I've also been connecting with the ancestors, connecting with mentors more, and just really shutting up and listening. You guys might not think that because I'm interrupting Celeste.
No, you're not.
But the idea is like, yeah, how can I just really just sit by somebody and soak up the wisdom through osmosis in a really organic kind of way. So I don't really want to go through I have a master's degree. I don't really want to keep going to school in that way. How can I do it a little bit more organically, where it provides a lot of joy, from the inside out? All right, so back to this eclipse. What are the December 4th eclipse? What are the other things going on that we need to know about?
Yeah, so another big thing, it doesn't happen until December 24th, but I think it's the biggest thing that we're going to really feel with this eclipse is the Saturn-Uranus square. So Saturn is in Aquarius and Uranus is in Taurus. And these two titans are about, this is what we're all called to do in 2021. There have been 2 squares already. The first one coincided in the US with big power outages in Texas. It's when structures break down. But what it means in our own charts is about how we are supposed to release restrictions, how we are supposed to release outdated structures by bringing in change in order for our highest good. So really look to not just where 12 degrees Sagittarius is in your chart, but where 11 degrees of Taurus and and Aquarius are, and think about how you can make changes and release things in the Aquarius house by innovating through the Taurus house. I think is the biggest thing for people to be thinking about this, because we've got one more shot to make the changes
to make the changes. Yeah. And guys, like you're in Taurus, right? I think the best advice that I've been leaning into is just diversify. You know, we don't know what's happening, and even as astrologers, we don't necessarily see what's on the other side of that. Here in the United States, we're going to be facing our Pluto return years, depending on who you ask, in 2022 through 2024. And so I think also these eclipses are shining a light on what is about to get crazy and disrupting, right? Like that Saturn square Uranus, that third and final disruption and breaking down. You know, I think that is going to speak a lot to it too. I like how you said innovating through the Taurus house. I'm like, oh, we could do that. So, yeah, and I think the last time the nodes were in Gemini and Sagittarius, we had a lot of breakthroughs in space too. And so that's another, I think, if we're looking at what is this going to be shedding light on, maybe we'll see some breakthroughs in space travel, in space, you know, I guess the body of knowledge that we have about outer space. So who knows, maybe we'll find a new planet or a new star or a new solar system. I don't know.
Yeah, well, all these people have been, Captain Kirk went into space with, I think Jeff Bezos, and other people have been going into space. So yeah, I think that will really continue. Yeah, the other big thing is that Venus is in Capricorn now and will be there until March, and she's going to be retrograding in Capricorn. And at the solar eclipse, she'll be at 22 degrees Capricorn, while Pluto is at 25-degree Capricorn. So Venus, our values, our money, our resources, Pluto unearthing things, Pluto transforming things, intensity changing things, and in the sign of Capricorn about like pursuing excellence and building wealth, and like this is another thing why I think about our personal worth is so important. So really watch what's going on with your relationships, especially the long-term relationships with that Venus Pluto. People will be making commitments. Someone was telling me all sorts of people are getting engaged. And yeah, we may see more diamond rings coming out at Christmas time, but I recommend being very mindful of whoever you start, if you're single, whoever you start dating around this time, because especially if you're a Capricorn, because that intensity may like lead to like so much excitement, but you know, choose carefully, because you may have a hard time breaking away once you've started.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for Capricorn, yeah. Capricorn rising, Capricorn moons. Okay. So, guys, this has been just a little sneak peek of what we're going to talk about on December 1st. So I wanted to invite everybody to register through wiseguyscollective.com, because Celeste is going to teach us a class. It's a $20 investment. If you can't make it live, no worries, we'll send you the replay, but you're going to want to come live, because Celeste is going to do a hot take on the eclipse on your chart. And so is this an okay time for you to give us a little sample, dip our toes in the water?
Sure, definitely.
All right. So let's hear it. So she's got my birth data, she's got my birth time, and what do you see? What's your hot take for December 4th eclipse for Tiff?
Yeah, so that eclipse is at 12 degrees of Sagittarius and will fall in your first house. So it's about you as well. Like you're doing this, as I said, this is like a year and a half transition. So like there's a beekeeping thing. I love it. I love how you're taking this master class. You're adding new skills in order to expand yourself Sagittarius. It's right near your Mars, so you may get like this extra energy in order to move these things forward. The other thing I see is that, yeah, Uranus is in your sixth house, so you're like changing things about the routines and rituals in your life. And it's near your Chiron. Now, Chiron is known as the wounded healer. And so there's also this thing where there's these astrologers called the Magi astrologers, associated with work and associated with love relationships like marriage. So really interested to see how you're evolving your business. Your Chiron's in Taurus, that to me totally speaks to this beekeeping. You know, you're doing something with the earth. You're like growing these mushrooms. You're making these changes, and you probably feel this really strong pull. Is it healing for you doing this?
Oh my God, like nothing else, you know. I just love it. You know, I could just be with the bees or be in the garden all day long with my bare feet, you know, one with the earth. And it's all, the bees have so many sacred geometries that are associated with space and stars and the celestial beings. And so it's really a way for me to connect the earth with the sky. And so that is something that has been very gratifying for me. The bees have taught me, or are teaching me, I should say, patience. I'm glad that you pointed out that my Mars is in the first house, because there have been times when I have endured more stings than were necessary. There have been times when I went out to do a split on a hive that was so massive and came out to a huge pile of bees that had been killed by pesticide. And so that is Mars energy, you know. So now I'm going to be defensive and go talk about, not defensive, I'm going to be protective of the bees, right? Because that is how we eat, right? We don't, especially for vegetarians, it's 2/3 of your plate if you're not are pollinated by bees, and it's 100% of your plate if you're a vegetarian, that the bees had a handy work in making your food, right? So to me, I can use that Mars energy and get passionate and get psyched up about it and teach about it. I've called our county extension agents. I've sent our bees off to a toxicology entomology lab at Cornell to see exactly what happened, so that I can teach, right, Sagittarius there, so that I can help share information so that we can have food sustainability, Uranus and Taurus, right? And so, yeah, heck yeah, it lights me up.
Yeah, yeah. And you're serving your Chiron in the sixth house
Oh yeah,
through the work that you do.
yeah,
And yeah, you're serving the earth, Taurus. So yeah, I
yeah,
love this.
yeah.
Yeah, and I love how the Venus Pluto conjunction that's approaching is in your second house of personal resources. So I'm sure you're thinking about, launching new things, how you're going to magnetize things. Yeah. Yeah, how are you going to magnetize new wealth to yourself is what I'd like you to think about as well, because Venus is a yin planet. It draws things in, connecting that with Pluto. Like, what are you going to draw to you in terms of your personal resources by all of the work you do, from publishing to teaching to the astrology? I'm just in awe of all that you do.
Oh, thank you. I have never been bored a day in my life. You know, my days are filled with amazing people, amazing projects, and I'm just so blessed. And I think it's a lot of that Mars in the first house. Like, I am ready to party. You know, I want to play and I want to be here and I want to experience our full vitality and full potential. You know, that's really what keeps me, I guess, interested in that healing the earth and connecting with people. So I'm glad you brought up that it's in the second house, right? Second house, I like to remind people your net worth is not your self-worth, right? And there is a huge connection with love and money, and especially as we're approaching these Taurian and second house issues, how we treat our finances is often how we are treated in our relationship. And so if you're having an unhealthy, or if you don't like the way your relationship vibes are going, change the way that you treat your finances. Be respectful and responsible, right? Keep a tally, understand the income and the outcome, make a budget so that you're really honoring that spiritual financial flow that is a flow, right? So more little tips for other people that have, I guess, second house stuff going on too.
Yes, and this eclipse is sextile your Juno, and Juno is an asteroid of partnership and marriage, and it's also pretty close to your Venus. So I wouldn't be surprised if you got some new work partnerships from this eclipse season coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
proposing? Are you proposing to me, Celeste?
Yes, if you'll have me, we may figure out something more to do
I
after the
love
class together. I think this really could be something. And then the last thing I wanted to say is like this Saturn Uranus square. So you have Aquarius is your third house, and Taurus is your sixth house. So I'm wondering for you, what are you releasing around? The third house is also about the mind, and it's about tools, it's about the mind, it's about our local environment and things like that. Looking at your chart, I'm wondering if the Saturn Uranus square is a lot internal about things you have to release. How have you found it?
Okay, so I love that prompt. And guys, we didn't play ahead of time. Like this is all live, natural, back and forth. We didn't look at this together ahead of time. So what I'm releasing with the mind is all has to do with my human design experiment, right? A lot of the big astrology led me to human design. You know, human design found me, and you guys all know about it because I've been talking about it. And we now offer sessions through Wise Guys because it was so life-changing for me, right? And so a lot of the philosophy, it's not really a philosophy, but a lot of the language around it is really getting out of the mind. If my mind is thinking about it, my body is not making a decision. And my whole chart is based on listening to my sacral, yes or no, or right? That's my decision making process that I was unaware of until I found human design found me. And so when you're talking about what are you releasing from the third house mind, it is being driven by 1,000 forms of fear, 1,000 forms of anxiety, 1,000 forms of checklists. You know, like I love planning, and I know that really annoys some people in my life, but I like really strategizing, and that whole Virgo thing you were talking about. I just love that, right? Like I'm great at it. I can make books, I can do all these things because of that. But there's a softening going on right now. And it's again happening over time. It's not like a light switch situation. It's like, oh, Tiffany, your mind's chewing on it. That's so sweet. Can we let that go? You know, how do you really feel in your body? And so I'm not saying that this is correct for everyone. I'm saying that this is how I'm experiencing letting go of some of the mental chatter through yoga, through meditation, through focusing on my breath, through not being driven by my really special brain thoughts, right? And just coming back to have a more present moment. Is this correct for me right now? Yes or no? You know, and then bounce around the universe with that. It's an experiment. And so I don't know if that's how it's going to go, right? But that's how I'm personally releasing some of this stuff around my mind. You talk about the environment too. Man, I have been moving plants around this house and getting new books out, putting old books away, like doing just kind of changing the vibe of where I live. And that has been something that's happened again over time. So I divide my time in both places. I have made a lot of changes within just the structure, the immediacy of it. I'm an only child, so sometimes third house has to do with siblings. And so for me, it's more about like that close relationship with my environment and how very important it is for me to have that before I start my day. I make my bed first thing every morning. I have a sequence, right? And if I get the sequence started out right, it's good. And if there's something wrong with the sequence, if the fridge is not organized, like I can't think straight. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm experiencing it.
I love that. And your south node is in the third house. So yeah, I think you're doing the right work that this Saturn Uranus square is asking of you. You're making changes to your daily life, your ritual, and your routine in order to release this perfectionism and over analyzing and all that stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Which serves me well in looking at astrology charts, but not so much when I'm leading my personal life, you know? So
yeah. Yeah, another thing to note is that this eclipse coming up this week on Friday, the 27 Taurus, is squaring your Vesta in Leo.
Mm,
So again, Vesta is about the house, the home, the hearth.
mhm,
It's also about like sisterhood. There's a lot of things about what's one's worth,
mhm.
what's one's work, excuse me, not worth. So yeah, think about how you're making those changes as well with that square. So you'll see your chart tells you the same thing multiple different ways. And so it sounds like you are just like on the right path, doing the right things that you need to do for your highest good for your
For
evolution.
this season. So to speak to that a little bit more, last December, with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction, I shifted Wise Skies into the new name Wise Skies Collective, right? And so that, because we've got so much Aquarian energy, or we had so much Aquarian energy at that time, I wanted to work with the energy of the collective. And so that is another thing when you're talking about work, right? I have over time made intentional shifts with this business for all of us, right? So there's more intuitives, different classes, fun ways to really understand yourself. I would say that Wise Skies is the anti-guru, right? There's not like one person in leadership that has all the right answers, but what we can do is share our experience with each other, you know, through this beautiful network. And so I think that's how I'm working with that, and have been working with that for the last year or so. So it
That's
brings me to connect with beautiful people like you who have beautiful creative minds, who say things that I know but hit me in a way where I'm like, oh, thank you, you know, and I feel seen, right? And that's how you feel. Like that's how all of us feel when somebody can look at our birth chart and describe something um, in a way that you feel seen and heard, not only by Celeste but by the universe, really, right? Like you're not a mistake, you're not an accident. Your birth chart was divinely timed. My midwife always said that babies are born on their birth date, not their due date, right? So no matter what time you were born, no matter what type of birth you had, traumatic or perfect, you have this beautiful blueprint. And so I want to invite you guys again to come to class with Celeste on December 1st at Wise Skies. You can register at wiseskiescollective.com on our classes tab. I also have it on the homepage, so it's boom, easy. The registration investment is $20, and Celeste is going to do for you what she just did for me. So, and I will talk a lot less during class. You guys know I'm notorious for being that annoying student that has all of the millions of questions, but I promise that I will sit and listen and learn with you. Anything else before we wrap up, Celeste? Any kind of takeaways or anything that you want to just add as punctuation marks here at the end?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, eclipse season, it's a time of intense energy.
Mhm.
So depending on your chart, it may like just go by and nothing happen if you're not being activated. But if you're being activated, be aware that some changes may happen in your life. And the best thing for all of us to do is to get enough rest, slow down a bit, and be the observer. Really watch what's going around yourself and the collective and yourself about the themes. And yeah, just enjoy the holiday season too.
Yeah, I love the message of slowing down. You can't go wrong with that. I have a mentor that says, if we go slow, nobody gets hurt. I use that a lot. So I thank you so much for
One more
sharing.
thing to
Oh yeah,
say. Oh
yeah,
yeah, follow me at Astrology by Celeste on Instagram
yes.
as well as YouTube. I
Mm-hmm.
have it's called Dangerous Beauty. I have a YouTube about the eclipse that's happening on Friday.
Perfect.
And yeah, you can sign up for my mailing list and get my How to Manifest with the Moon guide.
So I love that guide, and I highly recommend you get on her mailing list. It's astrologybyceleste.com, and it's very clear where you can sign up. I'll also link it for everybody below. But Celeste is one of those astrologers that writes really good newsletters, and so you're always going to learn something from her. And she's just so gifted, and I'm so glad, Celeste, you answered that Pisces North Node calling into just getting into the waters of the of astrology. That is a huge shift from corporate America, right? I feel like you have to decondition a little bit. And
Mhm.
I don't know what your life was like before, but it feels like very fluid. It feels like this is, I'm just so glad that you answered that call because you have so much to share with us. And I thank you for teaching us today. And I thank you in advance for teaching us on the first. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. So with that, guys, go follow Celeste and namaste. We'll see you soon.
Namaste. Thank you, Tiffany.